Welcome. The ninjas were everywhere in the 90s. We had the alien ones, remember, don't call him an ant. We had the turtle ones, who couldn't decide if they're actually ninjas or just heroes. We even had international rabbit ninjas. But you know what I want? I want a samurai. I want a samurai duck called Donk. It was an Amiga format cover disc that first introduced me to this game. Back then it was still known as Donk. An unfortunate title, and one that did get them into trouble later, but the demo itself was really good and had a surprisingly large number of levels. It really did pique my interest. The game itself finally came out for the regular Amigas as well as the CD32, and I got the floppy disk version to play on my Amiga 500 Plus. One of the nice touches of the game was that it would upgrade itself if you had a 1200. You just had to select that option during loading. They also put quite a lot of effort in to the CD32 version, so I have to give the developer the hidden props for actually putting the effort in. With most developers would have released two versions of the game for each of the machines, or not done anything with the 1200 at all, and would have just done a lazy straight port, the 1200 version, to the CD32. It's unfortunate this remains their only commercially released title. This seems to be because they did not have a lot of luck with publishers, with at least one of them folding before they were able to publish the game, and then the other deciding to raise the price, which actually negatively impacted some of the review scores, as some of the reviewers used to take the price of a game into consideration, and if they didn't think the game was worth the money asked for, they would point that out. On starting the game, we get to choose between the upgraded version or the regular version, so you can still play the regular version on a 1200 if you want. And as soon as we get into the game, we see the start of what will become quite a large map, which contain all 7 themed zones, with just a few icons changing when you travel into their zones, which is a bit unfortunate that they didn't do more with the map, but the fact it's there and it's so large is quite good. And when I say large, I do mean large. There's 112 levels in the game in total, and you're going to have to play quite a few of them a couple of times as well, because some of the levels have multiple exits. These will either lead you to the boss fight of each zone where you can get a key, or typically the alternate route will take you to one of the other zones. And some of the alternate routes will actually just take you down a dead end. Now, with the huge number of levels and the number of times you're going to have to be completing them, thankfully the game comes with a save facility, so you don't have to try and complete it in a single sitting. The goal of the levels are to collect all the gems, which will open up the regular exit so you can leave. The hidden exits can be accessed at any time. As you can imagine, it's not that simple. We have large maps, we have obstacles, we have enemies, and there are blocks, which you're going to have to find buttons in the level to turn on and off depending on the situation. And once you've collected all those gems, it's not just an easy ride to that exit, you're timed, and the whole level starts flashing red, and it gives you some screaming music to really pump you up to try and get to that exit quickly. You really don't want to hang around. Thankfully, most levels have a map station that allow you to look around the entire map and plan your attack, because normally you want to try and leave a gem that's near the exit to last. And this is because the game can be quite punishing. There's a number of single hit deaths, but thankfully you can take a number of hits from most enemies, which is a nice upgrade from the demo versions. Your health is shown in the bars at the top and bottom of the screen, but there is no way to refill that health. Once it's down for good. Even changing level will not refill it. The only way to get it back is to die. But thankfully we start with 7 lives and we have unlimited continues, which might sound like it'll make the game quite easy, but it does mean that you've only got 7 attempts at completing a level, and in some levels those lives can vanish quickly. As I mentioned, the game was also ported to the CD32, and comes with the standard improvements that we come to expect from CD32 games. We have animated cutscenes, and we have CD music. But it actually comes with a number of unexpected improvements. In some ways you can think of this as the refined edition of the game. And we get to see those changes right off the bat. We have a new title screen, and the map looks completely different. The order you go through the levels has changed, but it also makes it harder to realise what level is the fortress that you're going to fight a boss in. Most of the levels themselves were also tweaked and rearranged, and some of the later worlds actually have completely new graphics and a new style to them, and actually look really good. Unfortunately, not all the changes were for the better. We're now stuck with some long animated cutscenes when we go in and out of a level, which can really slow the pacing of the game down a little. I guess they're there to hide the loading, but they still feel a little too long. And what's worse is the nice little screen to select continue or quit when you run out of lives has been replaced with these overly long running sequences where you have to sit through one to then sit through the other to decide if you want to continue or quit. One of the better improvements to the game is to the 2-player co-op mode. Now this was there in the original game, but each player had the exact same sprite. But now they've added in a dedicated sprite for player 2 who's got his own name and style. He is called Judo Jugs. Now it's actually quite rare to see a 2-player split-screen platformer on the Amiga, and even rarer for it to be a co-op game, so it's such a cool feature to have, and it's one that I never really got a chance to properly play, as most of my mates weren't quite into Donk as I was. But the mode was really quite cool. Each player could go off on their own to collect the gems, and then when they're all collected, both had to make it to the exit, and if one player lost all their lives, they would have to sit out the game until the other player lost all their lives and selected continue, which is a bit unfortunate, but it probably makes sense from a gameplay point of view. It's an indication of how little the developers thought of the story that they didn't even bother to try and work judo into the actual plot. And yes, there is a plot. It's found only in the manual, and it's pretty terrible, even by 90s standards, and it involves an intergalactic samurai coming down to Earth as he wants some Cantonese duck for dinner. But when the ugly duckling Donk quacks and gives him the sad, sad eyes, he decides that training him would be a better use of his time, obviously. When that was completed, the now much older samurai takes off for the stars because he wants to find the crystals that give the source of power to samurais. These crystals, for some strange reason, also protect the atmosphere of Earth. Go figure. And Donk, deciding that he didn't want to be alone, decided to go after him. And as you can see, no mention of the Jugs at all. Where did he come from? Where did he go? Nobody knows but Jugs Judo. There are a number of power-ups that you can collect to help you in your mission. Some of them you can actually store and use whenever you want, others will be triggered as soon as you touch them, and not all of them are useful. The ones that you can collect involves a shield egg, a super jump, being able to float, and a screen-killing bomb. To activate those, you need to duck down and hold the fire button. Ducking also makes you invincible, but if you hold it down too long, you will explode and die. But you'll take out anyone else that's on the screen at the same time, so it might be useful in a few instances. Other pickups includes an invincibility, the old-timer mode, which turns the screen black and white and plays some old-timey music, and slows down all the enemies. And the final one is a real annoyance, the reverse mode. Right becomes left, left becomes right, down up down, which can really mess with you if you're using up to jump. The music and sound effects might not be to everyone's taste, but one of the things I really liked about this game was the fact that you had both music and sound effects at the same time. This was far more rare on the Amiga than it really should have been, so I really do appreciate when developers put the work in to make this happen. Due to the long and troubled nature of Donk's development and publishing, we got to see a number of demos, and through those we got to see how the main character changed, from his original Dong look with claws to getting a sword and eventually becoming a full samurai. It's an interesting glimpse at the development process for the game. Amazingly, this is not the end of Donk. There was an attempt, and I think it might be still going, to port the game, or at least do a remaster of the game, for the Dreamcast of all machines. And for its 20th anniversary, they made a card game. Now, I've only really learnt about this in the last couple of days, so I've not been able to get my hands on a copy, but it does look quite interesting. It's for 1 or 2 players, and it looks really cool, with the artwork being taken straight from the game. I may have to try and get my hands on a copy if I can. Now, it really is quite amazing for an obscure Amiga title to spawn a card game in 2013. I can't think of many other games that can share that crown. And with that, I feel all there's left to do is leave you with the terribly 90s dance track that is the CD32 intro song. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish, and this was Goldfish on Games. big duck, little duck, cardboard box, 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 big duck, little duck.